This has been a work, obviously, in progress. It started out, Senator Connie Lawson was the responsible party. And of course, when Connie moved on to the Secretary of State's position, then it was turned over to Senator Randy Head. And Randy has been conducting these meetings. I think we've had about 4 meetings. And as Andrew alluded to, Gail Dodds from Daviess County has been involved, Bill Borney from Adams, Stacy O'Day from Allen, Jamie Shepard from Howard County as the assessor, Bon Plantica and I as county treasurers. So all of the groups have been represented. Also, Andrew has been involved, John Coldren, who is a lobbyist, as well as Katrina Hall for the Farm Bureau, Brian Bailey and Barry Wood for the DLGF, and George Angelone and Bob Siglo from the LSA. So we've had a pretty wide variety of group. And I've got to tell you, the good part about this, Randy Head, I think, thought this would wind up being an unfriendly group, and we all performed very nicely. We worked and played well with others, as I hope we will all do here today, and we were able to come to consensus on a lot of issues. I think it's great when assessors, auditors, and treasurers can come together because we do have one common goal, and that common goal is to do the best for our taxpayers and for the state of Indiana and for our counties. Several goals were included in this process, trying to coordinate some realistic dates to help each county succeed in final goals of the accurate assessments, the most accurate assessments that could be arrived at for budgetary purposes for all taxing units. Trying to prepare a budget on a what-if assessed value is very difficult, makes much of the process absolutely 110% worthless. As those of you who are auditors all know, it's a futile effort because you're not giving any taxing unit correct information, but you're giving them the very best you can give them at that point, and that's what you've always strived for. I know, having been an auditor, I know that's what auditors have always tried to strive for. So trying to actually coordinate realistic dates that could work, and then adjusting dates to help ensure that the tax rates could be issued on time. You know, we've done a great turnaround on the way tax bills are going out today. We've been able to catch back up. I'll tell you, when I was the auditor, that was when we were dragging behind, and you talk about stress on top of stress. So being able to get tax bills back on time, it's just been a wonderful thing. But we have to keep at it because guess what? We're facing reassessment, and that reassessment has always been the thing that has dogged us down, has caused us to fall apart and for the wheels to fall off, and not necessarily anybody's fault in a lot of cases. I can tell you also I've been a county assessor, so I know how that whole process works, and sometimes that is one of the least fun jobs to have. So trying to get this all pulled together has been very, very critical. And also, we worked on trying to resolve some conflicting dates that are in the statutes. There are some that are just, you know, it says one thing one place, something else another place. So that's what we were trying to actually address also. The group has actually met 4 different times, and we've done numerous emails back and forth with great information being exchanged. And I can tell you, in the 37 years that I've been involved in county government, I've sat on about 5 of these, and I got out all 5 sets of my notes. And every year we tweak it a little bit to try to make it a little better. Is this going to fix everything in 1 year? Absolutely not. And it's not the panacea, but you have to take it little bit by little bit. So to try to go through some of those proposed changes, moving the date for the assessment of real property to January 1, that is currently March 1, just seemed all of us to make a lot of sense. From assessors' perspective, some of the information that they shared is that by January 1, you would maybe have less partial assessments because they're not starting new things much in January. So that might be a plus for that. Moving the assessment of mobile homes to January 1, those 15 days won't make any difference. It will not bump up against anything else. And also moving the assessment of personal property to January 1. Of course, currently that date is March 1st. That March 1st date was set because in the magical years when we were doing inventory, the farmers had grain. That was the magical date that they wanted to have their grain gone, and so that's why March 1st had been selected. Taking personal property out of that picture means that date really no longer has any real bearing. So that's why it was felt that all of these could actually move to January 1 without causing much apoplexy to anybody. Changing the deduction qualification date to January 1, for real estate you have to live there in order to qualify to get the exemption. That certainly seems to make sense since January 1 would be the new assessment date. And then changing the deduction filing date. I have to tell you, to those of you who are auditors in the room, you have my utmost respect. Trying to post exemptions up until the end of the year has got to have been an absolute zoo. So this we felt would be a big improvement to try and help the auditors who strive so hard to try to get assessed values done timely. And I believe this certainly would go a long ways towards helping that. The next point is moving personal property filing date to March the 15th. Currently that date is May the 15th. And anybody who has been an assessor more than 1 year understands that you come right after federal filings, and so as soon as April 15th is over, then the accountants start thinking about you. And Katrina Hall shared that February 28th is the day for farmers to file federally for some of the issues that they have, and so moving that date to that March 15th would not be an intrusion, and besides that, those accountants haven't started to work probably on the federal tax at that point on a lot of them. Then the roll date. You know, in all of this, we've tried to cut the assessors a little bit more time to try to make things happen. Then the roll date, moving the assessment roll date to June 15th, that date is currently July 1. That would cut the auditors a little bit of slack and give them an extra couple of weeks to try to work on those processes, which certainly seemed to make sense. A couple of things that we did not agree to that are still, issues out there is that we are currently under the provisional bill statute that if we do not get bills out at least 15 days in advance, then we are required to do a provisional bill. Now, sending taxpayers a bill 15 days in advance is a pretty short chain to expect them to come up with a lot of the money that we're expecting them to pay today. However, if we wrote that into the statute, then we would be bound by that at the end of, back the 30 days up, we would be required to have a bill out, and if we did not have a bill out, then we would be required to do a provisional bill. It's kind of two-sided there. Did we cut ourselves any slack? No. The treasurers really didn't get any slack out of it. But the part that goes to the next step then is we also didn't really benefit the taxpayers a whole lot in this. But if every county made the commitment that those dates don't really mean anything if I'm ahead of them, that is not your I'm going to get on it to get it out that day. That's the day that you would hope you've had them out for 2 or 3 weeks. I can tell you that in my county in the last 2 years, we have had tax bills out the last week in March. It's been wonderful. People have had longer to pay. We have less crowds in the treasurer's office, and it has worked out tremendous. But you cannot set and wait until the last day to get that process done. So if those AVs are set and if those rates are done on time, and you get those rates early, we need to get on it and get those tax bills created just as quickly as possible. The other issue that was discussed that was not adopted is changing the tax payment date. Now, I'm going to ask a question. How many courthouses are closed for Election Day? How many courthouses are closed for Veterans Day? What day do we pay taxes? May 10th. What day do we pay taxes? November 10th. taxpayers are just really not happy. Now, I've worked at the county 37 years, and I guarantee you Kosciuszko County has closed that courthouse every year for 37 years for those holidays aforementioned. However, you have taxpayers who don't come to the courthouse every day, who don't read the newspaper, who do not realize what the issues are. One of the things that have been proposed was that we move that date back to May 1st, or we move it forward to May 15th. At least we would get away from the week of no, when taxpayers rush up to the door and go shake, shake, and nobody's home. Those were issues that we did not include, but we do need to keep in mind that the taxpayers have to come along with us, have to come first in some of these issues. So getting your bills out early, and then probably more PR on trying to share when you're closed, when you're not closed, those kind of things. Hopefully that would try to help it. But I think that is a valid point. Bob and I have talked at great length about this, and we believe that, keeping in mind that taxpayers are how we are able to do all of this, and they should really be up towards the top of our list, is very important. There were many related issues, including the impact and the requirements for the annual reassessment. Obviously, that one's coming up and going to be here quickly, actually, on the heels. And the unintended consequences. If you've been around more than a year, you know that when the legislature gets done and they make a wonderful law that sounds like mom and apple pie, by the next year, we've all figured out that, whoops, this was missed or that was missed, which then means that we need to do a little cleanup. So this bill is going to be proposed. It may pass, it may not pass. We just have to, give it the time and see if we can't all work to try to achieve some of these goals at least. We also did some brainstorming on various different ideas that might cut costs in counties. One example was trying to mail the Form 11s with the tax bills. And at that point, we'd have to be very careful that Form 11s did not hold up the tax bill process. But nothing was agreed to on that, but that was another thought that had been shared. And consideration for the 2% AV that can be withheld, if our AVs are actually closer to correct, then do we really need to have that provision left in, or would that be something that after the waters have been tested, that might be something that would need to go away? And also shortening the appeal process. In speaking with the assessors, most of the assessors shared that their appeals are all filed in the last feeding frenzy at the very end, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that you don't do anything until you have to. So if that date was moved up, instead of the 45, it was moved up to 30 or even 15 days, there would be enough preparation time for everybody to get those appeals filed, and perhaps that might also help to expedite the process, because when you drag that out for 45 days, that's a big chunk in the tax calendar, 45 days. So that was the other issue that we had talked, that was kind of one of those outside on the fringe things, but something that might need to be looked at. Implementation of this is not going to be overnight. Obviously, there are a lot of statutes that this information is included in, and so those dates would all have to be looked at and adjusted and identified. Also, 50 IAC would also have to be amended, because many of those dates are also incorporated into that. That alone is not a fast process. It's probably as slow, if not slower sometimes, than the legislative process, believe it or not. So probably the quickest that implementation would happen would probably be January of 2015. That would kind of be the target date. That would give everybody time to try and get this into your schedule, try to get it to where you can work through some of these issues that it may create. And then obviously, as with any pieces of legislation, we would all have to be very aware and follow up on any other issues that are not working in this process, and be willing to come back together and try to work to rectify those.